What is going on, everybody? It is your boy Nathan My Skills, and today I'm bringing you guys another Division 2 videos. Today's going to be a more news-focused video. We're going to be talking about the big changes coming to PvP in the Division 2, and this was all announced during the State of the Game today. So we'll have a lot of the clips from the State of the Game, and then I'll just talk a little bit about it in between each clip. So the first thing that they addressed during the State of the Game was normalization. So let's see what they had to say.
We'll start with normalization. Like I said, I think the first thing we've done a lot, but the first thing is we're now normalizing to max world tier, so gear score 500. I think that's the first thing we'll just get out of the way is we are normalizing to gear score 500. And there's a couple other things. Ryan, you want to touch on those?
Yeah, so previously we were taking your stats that you had rolled on your items and we were pushing them a little bit towards the middle. This time, or with this patch, we're going to be respecting your actual items rolls. So if you found an item with really high crit chance, it's going to have really high crit chance when it's normalized. The other thing is that we are going to be using your non-normalized skill power when using your skill mods to unlock skill mods. So if you have a min-max build and you've got a ton of skill power, when we're normalized, you're going to have the mod you've unlocked.
So all my stuff's active.
All it's active all the time.
That's awesome. So we're respecting the build itemization.
Yep.
And all my mods and skills. I mean, all that stuff, all the talent, it'll all be active.
Right.
Awesome. The second thing is we're continuing to tune the PvP damage, the specific PvP overrides, right? You want to talk about those?
Well, the first thing is the global PvP modifiers. So we have the PvP damage modifier, which I think currently is 70%, and we're going to be tuning that down to 40%.
Which means what for our user?
Well, it's going to bring the kill times a little bit more in line with what you experience when you were playing PvE content.
Gotcha.
So you have a little bit more time to react, that sort of thing. The second thing is we're going to be increasing the skill damage modifier from 20% to 25%. So it's not a huge increase, but it should bring them, make them a little more useful in normalized play.
Right. So essentially, what we're talking about is we're making fights last a little bit longer, so you have a little more time to react in PvP combat. Skills, while we're staying away from skills that one-shot players, skills will now be effective and will definitely swing the tide of PvP combat.
Yeah.
So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
So those are huge changes to normalization.
The second thing, we are now going to be tuning specific weapons and specific weapon archetypes with PvP modifiers as well. So like we could be buffing assault rifle damage by some percent. I think we have increased the assault rifle damage.
We have indeed. Yes, we have indeed.
In PvP.
Yes.
Exclusively. And we'll use that as we find balance issues that arise and try and use that to bring things more in line.
I think that's the super important point too, Hamish, is that we are tuning PvP separately, right? Weapon damage overrides, skill damage overrides, and even potentially skill behavior overrides to make sure that PvE can live and be happy, and then PvP can live and be happy.
An example of that skill behavior change would be like the Guardian drone.
Yes.
It lasts a lot. It can only block bullets for a very short amount of time in PvP.
In PvP, right.
Yeah, I'm really interested
So that's the normalization.
So I definitely love how they're attacking normalization. I felt like there was a big issue with normalization, not only in conflict, but in the normalized DZs. And them realizing that, them talking about if you have a lot of crit chance, you'll actually be rewarded for having a lot of crit chance. And then also looking at ARs. ARs have a big issue, in my opinion, for normalization. I feel like they don't have enough damage. They said they are increasing the damage in PvP. So that is something I'm excited about. I feel like they're addressing normalization exactly like they need to. So let's see what else they had to say.
There is one more thing we did, and that's because, well, I hate hipfire. I'll just be honest. But we're removing crit from hipfire. So if you enjoy running right up on a person and just unloading your LMG from the hip, that's fine. You're still going to do damage, but you're just not going to crit.
So now remember, one thing you guys need to keep in mind is this is only against other players. If you guys do hit fire in PvE, you can crit. So if you're running an LMG with crit chance or you're running an SMG with crit chance, in PvE you can still crit while hip firing, but you can't crit while hip firing in PvP.
So that's it for normalization.
All right, yeah, you did touch on it before. Obviously a lot of this happens in the dark zone. Are there
Yes.
changes that you guys are making to that whole Dark Zone experience?
There are some changes. There's a couple. There's a few.
Just
I have
a
a huge
couple?
list of it right here.
Yeah,
Nice.
this is a big list. I think so. The first thing is we're retuning the loot ratios in the Dark Zone. So this is the Dark Zone and the occupied Dark Zone. So there's going to be a lot less non-contaminated loot that drops. There's going to be a lot more contaminated loot that drops. We want people getting contaminated loot. We want them engaging in the extraction loop and seeing each other and doing all that fun stuff.
The named bosses are going to
Yes,
always
guarantee.
drop the contaminated
Yeah,
item. Yeah.
named bosses will always guarantee a contaminated drop. And of course, higher level challenge landmark bosses have the ability to drop multiple items as well. So there's that. And to go along with that, actually there's one more thing I want to jump in before that. We're getting rid of the rogue cooldown. So for those of you not familiar, if you were going rogue, if you were rogue and you died, then we put a little timer on there that said you can't do bad things again, you bad person. And so we're taking that away. There's still a toggle cooldown.
Right, so you can't just be a little jerk and fake.
Fake toggle. But
Debated.
if you are, if you're running with a group and you die and you run back, you're going to sync up automatically. There's no rogue cooldown anymore, so that's gone.
Okay, cool.
We're increasing the contaminated bag size also, so it will default to 6. And then we've made some perk changes. So the tier 1 perk increases the bag size to 8, and then the tier 10 perk that previously increased contaminated loot drop rates now takes your bag size to 10. So you'll have a lot more room to hold all the juicy contaminated gear.
Nice.
And because we got rid of the rogue cooldown, we've also changed tier 4 perk that used to reduce that rogue cooldown. Now it's a reduction in XP loss if you died by rogue. So we made those changes to the bags and the perks.
Nice. A lot of people have also been talking about, maybe sometimes the Dark Zone feels a little bit empty, wanting to make sure that they have those engagements. Is that
Yes.
something that the team at Red Storm are looking at and making sure that people do get the intended experience?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you for that. There's going to be a number of steps we take to really solidify the 12-player count that we have in the Dark Zones. And the first thing that we identified was we had too many brackets. We just had way too many brackets. So right now, it's just 1 to 30, and then everyone in world tier. So we're reducing it down to just 2 brackets, and we believe that's going to help a lot with player density. And then we have some other things planned down the line to make sure we guarantee that when you're in the Dark Zone, there's always 12 players. That won't be for this title update, but we've got more coming in the future.
So they're making some big changes to the Dark Zone to bring more players into the Dark Zone, because right now they've done their tests. They've noticed that there's not a lot of players in the Dark Zone. Even players who play in the Dark Zone know that you really don't even go into the Dark Zone to farm. So everybody's really farming for gear outside. So they're trying to give you an incentive to go into the Dark Zone and give you an incentive to fight other players and interact with other players and get that unique Dark Zone experience that you don't get in any other game.
For the occupied Dark Zone in Division 2, what are some of the directions you want to take that in? And how has it been going so far?
That's a good question. I think the first thing is the damage modifiers for the ODZ. You want to touch on those?
Yeah, so we added a ODZ specific PvP modifier. So like we have the global PvP modifier that we just now tuned to 40%.
Mm-hmm.
We have one now for the ODZ, but currently it is tuned to the exact same value as the global PvP modifier because that's what feels good.
Mm-hmm.
But what that means is that if if balance issues arise, we can tune that specifically and separately from the rest of the game if we need to.
Yeah. So we're reining in time to kill in the ODZ a little bit. It's a little too intense, a little too crazy. So we're going to make fights last a little bit longer in the ODZ. And Ryan's saying we can tune that separately from other things. Yeah. So we'll always be very aware of the kill times in the ODZ.
And there's for skills as well.
Right.
Yeah. Skills and just gun modifiers.
We're cutting down the XP loss in the ODZ. It was a little too severe before, so now you're going to lose a little bit less when you die in the ODZ. But there's a couple other things that I might get in trouble for saying, but I'd love to say them to the community as it relates to the ODZ. So brace for love, everyone. So we're going to add Manhunt and Rogue back to the occupied Dark Zone, not in this update, but it's planned for sure. and I want everyone to know that we read you loud and clear, we understand your feelings, and agree with your expression. And so really, we're going to keep most of the rest of the Occupied Dark Zone the same, but we're going to add Rogue and Manhunt back. There won't be any Gray Rogue in there, so it's just going to be about Red Rogue and Manhunt, and just get that, almost like you said, that really old vanilla feel from the original game. Get that into the Occupied Dark Zone. Mm-hmm. We're also cutting down the number of AI patrols by an undetermined amount at this point, but we understand that those patrols can be brutal, and it can really interfere with some of that crazy PvP that players want to engage in, so we're going to trim those back as well and make sure that the PvE encounters are at the landmarks as much as possible, and that the PvP can happen where it's safe to PvP. So a lot of things coming in another update.
So the ODZ is getting a lot of changes. They want players to be able to fight players and not have to worry about NPCs just roaming all over the place. So NPCs will be more focused on the landmarks, and then hopefully you can fight with those players in the ODZ. And then they're also adding the Rogue and Manhunt timers, which I've always liked.
The biggest change we have to the Dark Zone.
Yeah, so we will be dropping items up to gear score 515 in the Dark Zone.
That's insane.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, we're allowing players to power creep over the max gear score if they go into the Dark Zone.
Right.
And there's no other place in the game that you can get, 515 or anything over 500. So the Dark Zone will be where you go to get that little last ounce of power for other activities.
So just like I pointed out before, they're trying to get us more in the Dark Zone, getting more player interaction. They want those servers full, and by doing that, they're giving us an incentive to get into the Dark Zone so that you can get up to 515 gear score, and that only drops in the Dark Zone.
What can you tell us about conflict? Obviously, a lot of PvP happens outside of the Dark Zone as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Where is conflict happening? Or what's happening there right now?
A really big one, something that was interesting as we've gone on with our players' user experience and our UI. There was a decision pre-launch to cap enemy armor bars at a certain number of pips. I think it was 10.
Yeah, and that's just because when you have a bunch of pips, it could get a little tough to see.
Yeah,
it's a little weird.
It was visually messy, but then, hey, guess what? Players didn't have all the information, so it might seem like a no-brainer, but we've made it so now players' bars, enemies, and your teammates will properly reflect the amount of armor that they have. So if you go in and you have 468 billion armor and 900 million pips, we're going to reflect that.
Okay.
And so
it's also easier to see the armor boost in conflict.
Exactly.
You see all those pips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of the boosts, for people that are familiar with conflict, we have those boosts that appear at different times in the match that can increase your damage or increase your armor. We're reducing the power of those boosts by 50% across the board, so they don't sway things quite as much, but they're still a tantalizing tertiary objective.
Yeah.
So we're reducing the power of those.
Okay.
We're synchronizing the team spawns a little bit more, so when you respawn with your wave, the likelihood that you're with a teammate is increased. So to promote that team play and get less, run and die. We're making the NPC. Some of you may have never met this NPC, in fact, because he was kind of hidden underneath the platform. But we're making the conflict NPC more visible. We're moving him out and making him say more words to you and stuff like that over time. So you'll be able to see him. Some people probably didn't know he existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've talked to him.
Yeah.
I've never talked to him on live.
Yeah, you've never talked to him?
Never.
Always just the mega map?
Yeah.
Yeah. Skill cooldowns. It's something that wasn't happening before. The cooldowns were not carrying over on death, so that was promoting some play that we didn't like. Too many, let's see, you can just call them skill proxies in the world. So if you pop your skill and then die, that cooldown is going to be respected. So we're doing that as well.
So big changes coming to conflict. If you guys are a big conflict player like me, you guys are going to enjoy a lot of these small changes with the respawn, with some of the skill cooldowns, the armor bar, and small little changes that they're making. So really excited where they're going with conflict.
Talents, especially, we've had a lot of feedback on, and also the gear. Could you tell me why you're looking to make some changes to those things, and then we'll get into a bunch of information?
Well, here's the intent, right? I think it's important for the community to understand, and it's important for us to make clear that we are in the process of aligning the game. And so things a game this complicated, a game with this many knobs to turn, a game that has so much in it, it's a beast to keep track of, for sure. And so things get out of alignment, right? And if you happen to find something that's out of alignment and it feels really fun because maybe it's a little more powerful, we have to rein that in. And some people say, well, why don't you just buff everything? Well, in theory we could, but I think the point I'd like to get across is that there's only so high we can go, right? If you just continue to go up in a ramp and just buff everything, everything starts to become really flat. And then when we add new world tiers and how we have to scale that, if any of you have ever played World of Warcraft, you know that they continuously go through stat squishes because numbers get so big, things get so high, and they just get so overblown. So for right now, we align, and that's how I approach it, at least, is that things come down, things come up to create a level of alignment that creates a fun experience throughout the entire game. And that has to do with PvP, that has to do with PvE, that's whether you're playing co-op and solo. So I know people don't like it when we take their favorite thing and say, hey, that's 5% instead of 10. But it's an alignment, so every other thing is potentially more viable, you know, as opposed to being a must pick. So
they made a lot of really good points about you can't just keep buffing everything. It has to be brought to the middle somewhere. So you got to bring some stuff down, you got to bring some stuff up so everything can be aligned, and it causes a better PvP. So hopefully they make the right changes that bring us a better PvP, not only in the dark zone, but in conflict, and everybody can be happy, right? And then they got into all the changes for talents. And here you guys go.
Unhinged, damage bonus reduced to 20% from 25%. Handling, negative reduced to 25% from 35%. All right. Strained, the talent, missing armor requirement increased from 10 to 15%. Increased to 10% from 5%. I've already messed it up. Frenzy, in PvE, reloading from empty grants 20% weapon damage instead of 35%, and 15% rate of fire for 3 seconds instead of 35% for 7 seconds. All right. In PvP, reloading from empty grants 15% weapon damage instead of 25%, and 15% rate of fire for 3 seconds instead of 25% for 7 seconds. And I guess that is the PvP and PvE specific changes that Ryan was just talking about. Preservation. In PvE, killing an enemy repairs 10% armor over 5 seconds instead of 5% for 3 seconds. Headshots improve the repair to 20% instead of 10%. In PvP, killing an enemy repairs 5% armor over 3 seconds. Headshots improve the repair to 15%, and it requires 7 defense attributes. The Spike talent, headshot kills grant 35% skill damage for 20 seconds instead of 25% for 10, so that's a huge buff. Requires 5 utility attributes instead of 3. Reformation. Headshot kills increase skill repair and healing by 50% for 20 seconds instead of 25% for 25 seconds, and requires 9 utility attributes. All right, on gear. Critical, reduced critical hit damage bonus from 8% to 5%. Surgical, reduced critical hit chance bonus from 8% to 5%. The Safeguard talent, reduced healing bonus from 75% to 50%, reduced duration from 7 to 5 seconds. Set requirement changed from less than 5 to less than 4 offensive attributes. The Clutch talent, increased health gained per critical hit from 15% to 20%. Reduced armor gained per critical hit from 2% to 1%. The Spotter talent, increased weapon damage to pulsed enemies from 10% to plus 20%. Requirement changed from 3 to 5 utility attributes. The Kneecap talent, shooting an enemy in the legs had a 10% chance to apply bleed. Now it's changed to 15%. The Entrench talent, headshots from cover repair increased from 5 to 10% of your armor. The Patience talent, after being in cover for 5 seconds, armor repairs by 5% every 1 second instead of every 3 seconds, and the requirement has been increased from 5 to 9 defense attributes. The Unbreakable talent, again, this is split between PvE and PvP. In PvE, 70% of max armor is repaired when your armor is depleted. Armor kits used within the next 7 seconds are not consumed, instead of 25% and 5 seconds. All right, for PvP, it's 25% of max armor is repaired when your armor is depleted, and armor kits used within the next 7 seconds are not consumed, instead of 15% and 5 seconds. Now requires 11. That's 11 defense attributes. No other talents affecting armor kits as well. The Bloodsucker, again, split between PvE and PvP. Depleting an enemy's armor adds a stack of 25% bonus armor for 10 seconds instead of 20% for 20 seconds. The max stack increased from 5 to 6. In PvP, depleting an enemy's armor adds a stack of 20% bonus armor for 5 seconds with a max stack of 5, which requires 11 defense attributes instead of 5 offense. So that's a big change, actually. Berserk in PvE, and this is only PvE from what I can see, the 10% weapon damage for every 20% of max armor depleted instead of 10% of max armor depleted. All right. Requires 11 offense attributes and AR, SMG, or LMG equipped. Bloodlust is split between PvE and PvP. In PvE, swapping weapons within 3 seconds of a kill grants 35% weapon damage for 5 seconds instead of 25% for 10 seconds. In PvP, swapping weapons within 3 seconds of a kill grants 20% weapon damage for 5 seconds. Used to require less than 3 defense attributes, but now requires 9 offense attributes instead. And the Blacksmith talent, killing an enemy with your sidearm repairs 50% of your armor, raised from 25%, and it can occur once every 15 seconds, increased from 10. It requires 11 defense attributes instead of 3. Whew.
So after listening to all of those talents, a lot of those talents are the talents we use, right? So we're going to have to get back to the drawing board. We're going to have to get back to the farming and start working on different builds. But remember, none of these are going into effect until next month. So these can all change a little bit. There is a PTS going on right now on PC, and that is where all of these are implemented at the moment. But these are not 100% official until we get that update. And I believe that update doesn't come till next month. And once that update drops, we'll see exactly where they tweak, because they're going to listen to player feedback. They're going to listen to the players that are playing the PTS and that are giving them feedback and letting them know, you know what, this is too much of a harsh nerf. There's no way you can actually really use this chest piece, or maybe these gloves, or whatever they need to do. They're going to listen to our input, and then hopefully we can get a more balanced PvP. So let me know what you guys think of all these changes. Use the comment section down below. I just want to say thank you guys again for always supporting my channel. Make sure you smash the thumbs up if you found this video useful. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to my channel, first time watching a video, and turn the notification bell on so when I release a video you guys get notified. As always, if you guys don't see me in conflict, if you don't see me in the dark zone, it's only a matter of time. Nothing but skills out.